All right. How long should we give doctors? 5 minutes? What's the protocol?
Well, you're talking to type A dietitians here, so
Yeah, we were here. We were on
Yeah.
2 minutes before.
In medical school, it was 15 minutes, but I
Oh,
don't know.
Lord have mercy. Real quick, Dr. Bickman, can you speak a little more to what you were saying about the uric acid and the ketone molecules? Like,
Yeah,
what,
of course.
while we're waiting for everybody?
Yeah, in fact, because we have a minute, let me who can I have screen privileges for just a quick sec, and I'll show you guys the figures.
Yeah, let me see if I can figure out how to do that.
Ken, you might be able to just click on my little box, and then say like grant host privilege or something.
Oh, put in Wayne, rename spotlight.
Like up in my three little boxes, my three little dots. But anyway, yeah, so I was curious about reconciling some of what is seen when some people are on a ketogenic diet. They are getting healthy, they're losing weight, they feel amazing, and yet they get frustrated by their stubborn uric acid levels. And uric acid is a problem. It causes inflammation. It is what I call a secondary cause of insulin resistance. So how can we reconcile that someone could have stubbornly elevated uric acid, and yet everything's getting better, including things that should be worse with uric acid? And so we had proposed the idea, my students and I, knowing of the anti-inflammatory effects of ketones that others had identified. We had thought, well, what if the particular metabolic milieu of the individual with the ketogenic diet has the ketones offsetting the BHB directly offsetting the consequences of the uric acid. And sure enough, at the cellular level, that's exactly what we found. So we detected basically every effect. Uric acid compromised mitochondrial function a little bit, co-incubating the cells with uric acid, and BHB restored it to normal. In fact, one of the biggest changes, I'm just looking at my data, was looking at the oxidative stress. The uric acid increased this oxidative stress marker, measuring hydrogen peroxide production, which is a main reactive oxygen species. That's why it's so good at killing pathogens, because it kills everything. And it went up almost 3 times. So uric acid increased H2O2 generation by about 3 times, and BHB brought it down almost totally to normal. It was about half of what it was with the uric acid. And then we looked at insulin signaling, which was totally restored when we treated the cells with insulin, measured some phosphorylated proteins. Uric acid compromised them. Co-incubation with the BHB brought it right back. And then we looked at a couple inflammatory markers. The muscle doesn't produce all of them, but it produces some of the big ones like TNF alpha and interferon gamma. Those are some pretty powerful pro-inflammatory markers. BHB totally wiped out uric acid's inflammation. That was actually the first data we generated, because my thought was, and how we're going to frame the discussion, is that the ketones are mitigating the negative effects of the uric acid because of their anti-inflammatory effects. So, I mean, that's a lot of
That's
really
very cool. That's super
doing.
cool. My brain goes to like thinking uric acid without the ketones is a big problem.
Yeah, it is. And yet that's how this started, because some people on a ketogenic diet, certainly acutely, will see an increase in uric acid. Some people even continue to see it, and yet every clinical marker is getting better. But if uric acid's high, it should not be getting better. Anyway, it's the ketones are putting them in their place.
That's going to make so many thousands of people happy to hear that.
And the cool thing about it is, at least this experiment, it was just a muscle cell culture. And muscle cells, you can almost spit and put them on the counter in the lab and they'll grow. It's one of the ironies of lab research, where muscle cells grow like weeds and fat cells are the most fickle little bastards. Every little condition has to just be perfect for the fat cell to grow. And yet in vivo,
I was going to say, in humans, that is not the case.
I know. That's the irony.
In some humans, it's the perfect condition to grow.
Yeah, I know.
Included, yeah. All right, I guess I'll let people in. We have two left who are not with us yet. No, we just have one, right, Westman? Everybody else is here. Yeah, okay. So let's get started. This is the first virtual meeting of the board of the American Diabetes Society. I want to welcome all you guys and thank you so much for being part of this project, which I truly think has the potential to change the metabolic health of the entire world. And I think the world is hungry for unadulterated, unmuddied, unconvoluted truth about human nutrition. And so the first question I want to ask everybody is we want the ADS to be the most transparent society talking about metabolic health and mental health. I think that we should make all of the board meetings public. The recordings be public and published on the website. Thoughts on that? Anybody have an objection to that right off the bat?
Dr. Berry, this is Jack Nichols.
Hey, Jack, good to see you. I knew Jack would jump in.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I was actually kind of just thinking about that. I was hoping you'd choose to record them because that makes it easier than making stenographic minutes. The only two things I would just basically follow what city councils and what public openness laws kind of mirror and say if there's something about litigation or about personnel matters or protecting minor children, that'd be the only time you'd need to go into an executive session. But I can provide further guidance on that if and when. You can't think of
any legal reason why that would be a problem.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Great. Any other comments or objections about making these meetings public on the website? No, everybody's good with that. Beautiful. Okay. All right. So until further notice, that will be our MO, because I really think that people are so distrustful. They don't trust anybody anymore, and it's hard to blame them. And so let me go through and show you what we've got social media wise so far. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. Oh no, I signed out. Let me sign back in.
And I just want to mention, I have been in some meetings where this is kind of not the answer to the question, but I've seen some wonderful AI tools that summarize the meeting. So it's just something to think about because those tools are amazing and it makes it easy for everybody. So that's something we should consider. I don't think there's a big cost for something like that.
No, I think it's included in Zoom now. If you click that link.
Oh, cool. Nice.
So can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, this is the current balance in Chase. This is from the GoFundMe, and then also we're also starting to get donations from the website. And so I just wanted you guys to be aware of the balance. And then here is the website that Daniel has created for us. Looks pretty slick. We're going to continue to build this out. Obviously, position statements, recipes, plus or minus videos, depending on what you guys think about that. Here is the X account, currently 3,100 followers. Here is the Facebook page, currently 3,400 followers. Here is the Instagram page, currently 1,700 followers. And here is the TikTok, 13 followers. So we've done nothing on TikTok so far, but Daniel has got all this stuff up and running for us. So thank you, Daniel, for that. And I just wanted you guys to be aware of all the different social media platforms so that you can go and make sure you're following those and make sure you're giving them a shout out, because the quicker that we've got a huge following on all these social media platforms, the more people we can reach. And I know many people find social media distasteful, but you have to understand that's where the people are. People are on social media, and the metabolically sick people we need to reach are on social media. And so I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Can I also say with the donation platform that we chose to use, it's called Zephy. And one of the reasons why that we chose to go with it is that it has zero processing fees for the charity. So we receive 100% of the donations received to us from our donors. Donors have the option to tip the Zephy platform. So they'll be asked to tip like $1 to $5, $10, $25 on checkout. And that's how Zephy makes their money. But on payout, we get 100% of the donation given to us by the from the donors.
Sweet. And on the ADS website, the donate button is now live. And so I would prefer, I'm at some point, I'm going to turn off the GoFundMe because I really want, I don't, you know, a lot of people find GoFundMe distasteful for various reasons, whether I agree or not. And so at some point I want to push, and then also they're taking a cut. That's how GoFundMe works. So at some point in the near future, we'll turn that off and we'll direct everybody here for donations. Okay, now let's stop that.
Dr. Berry, are we gonna do, or are y'all gonna do a LinkedIn or like a YouTube, maybe putting our minutes on YouTube, our meetings?
Yeah, at some point, I don't know where we're at on that, Daniel. We'll have a YouTube channel running,
Yeah.
but we had to start somewhere. Yep, Daniel, that's coming.
Also, will also be, so the Facebook page is now in the process of becoming a charity page, which this takes a couple weeks for this to go through because we also have to go through, everything is connected through, I'm learning this as I go along with this, through the PayPal Fund program. And the PayPal Fund program is a database of charitable organizations that they have to verify through the IRS. I'm working with Jack and also the CPA to get the proper forms needed to finish that application. Once we're in PayPal's charitable database, then we can be in the PayPal Fund, and then also in Facebook Charities, and then it also provides other benefits on different various platforms if once we're in that database.
Beautiful, beautiful. The next thing I'll share with you guys is that the Society for Metabolic Health Practitioners is 100% supportive and in. I was talking to Doug, who kind of is their CEO, and he's willing, as long as we give them credit, he's willing for to allow us to share all of the position papers on diabetes on the website, obviously with, you know, reference back to them. And so that's a good thing because they've already got, I think, a type 1 position paper, and they're working on now with Westman a type 2 position paper. And then I'm going to reach out to Verta Health and make sure they're okay with us sharing all of their research as well. We've already talked about that and that and that. Okay. Now my next question is, we obviously, and this is more for the MDs and PhDs, we obviously want this to be a real and a serious and a respected organization. And so me being Dr. Berry, I am well aware that I'm going to temper my tone substantially when I'm speaking for the ADS. And my question is that we need to discuss is how, because obviously there's a huge problem. We all agree with that. Obviously, there are millions of people suffering. Thousands are dying a day or being permanently mutilated with amputation and other things. How confrontational, how inflammatory, how pushy does the ADS need to be to reach the people while still retaining a modicum of formality? MDs and PhDs.
I'll take a stab at that.
Yes.
I've been talking about this since we started talking about it. I think that we need to take the higher road. And I think to be a professional organization, we need to just stay on the positive and just say it as it is, talk about the science, talk about the hope and the opportunity. And in my opinion, just forget that anything else exists. And this is my opinion. I think that it will put us on a higher ground. Going down to criticizing it creates a lot of resentment, and there are people that they just don't know that they don't know. They're trying their best, and it's only going to raise antagonism. I think we're much better off being a super professional society where we're taken seriously. We want that credibility. If we're not professional about it, we will lose credibility. And we don't want that, because we want other professionals to listen to us. And
Yes.
if we don't play the professional card, we will lose them. Also, I had a long talk about it with David Unwin, who has a lot of experience in this because they've done something in the UK. And David told me that at first they started out being a little bit like punchy, negative, trying to attract the people. And they quickly, he said, they regretted that. And they became a much more professional society. And he said to me, please discuss this with the group when you guys meet, because it's important to get that message out. And so I'm getting it out. I clearly, you know how to get an audience listening, but that's not the purpose here as far as, what we want to achieve. It's really important to me that the professionals also listen to us, not just the people. Because if it's just the people, then let's just continue doing what you're doing on YouTube. But no, we also want to be reached. We want to be taken seriously as a medical organization. That between us, whatever, but not whatever. I know this is being recorded. What I'm saying is, let's take the higher road.
Yep, I agree. Other doctors?
Yeah, could I come in?
Yeah.
Can you,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, doctor. Dr.
Can you hear
Kevin,
me?
go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I put my hand up. I don't know how to put it down again. There we go. First of all, you guys might know each other, but I have only met a couple of you, so I would value just having a brief introduction
yes, I
from the rest of everyone.
Go ahead
But
and introduce yourself, doctor, and make your point, and then we'll go around.
Okay. So but just on this point, I would just completely agree with what's just been said. If you were talking to David Unwin, he was part of, as I was, a public health collaboration when we started out in 2016, and I had to part company from them because of the way that they operated initially. Because I'm an endocrinologist, I am within the medical establishment and hierarchy. And I've managed to tread this line where I still carry credibility despite doing things very differently. And me being part of this organization would depend on maintaining that same, very professional, staying high, not going low approach. So yeah, I would just completely agree with what's just been said. And I think you will lose, because what we need to do in the next stage, we are certainly in the UK, we're gaining a lot of GPs, we're getting increasing interest from endocrinologists on this, and you lose them completely and very quickly with the wrong type of messaging.
I love that. Dr. Kevin, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then
Okay, so yeah, so I'm David Cavan. I'm an endocrinologist in the UK. I started exploring a low carb approach to management of diabetes, and diabetes is predominantly my work, type 1 and type 2 diabetes. About 15 years ago, when the first evidence of reversal came out, and I've been writing books for people with diabetes based on low carb since 2014. I work part-time in the UK health service. I'm in a clinic right now, so I may need to go and talk to a patient if I disappear quickly, but sure. I oversee projects in different countries and write books alongside.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And I'm Dr. Ken Berry. I'm a family physician, been practicing family medicine for 22 years, still currently licensed, and have a small practice part-time. And then also I have a little YouTube gig on the side. Dr. Glant?
Endocrinologist, also 20, I think something years, 25 maybe even. Been a low carber for 8 years, coming close to 9. And for the last 8 years, I've been treating my patients with the ketogenic diet. Started with the diabetes type 1, type 2, and now have, included all sorts of metabolic diseases as well. And now I'm in the U.S. Bringing this to really Medicaid population. This is what my big focus is right now.
Oh, that's beautiful. I
Fantastic.
love that. Professor Bigman.
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm a professor of cell biology and director of a metabolism lab. I just want to echo the sentiments here. My strategy and involvement with social media has always been to certainly not shy away from being bold and even a little cheeky. But if I'm going to, my philosophy has always been, if I'm going to kind of insult someone, it's probably going to be highbrowed enough that the person I'm directing it to won't get it. And yet I have the gratification of knowing that I politely insulted them without them really knowing. And so that's sort of my philosophy. Maybe because I have 7 older brothers and it was a matter of survival, but it's always worked for me.
Yes, I love that. Dr. Hampton.
Yeah, I'm in a large health system in Chicago. I am a family doctor, board certified in obesity medicine. And in this large health system, I've learned how to navigate. I've been with Advocate Health for 18 years. I've been low carb probably for about 12 years. So I integrate low carb into my practice. I do not have a metabolic clinic. I do have an obesity clinic per se, but ultimately I concur that in this model, I'm literally going to be the chair of the medical group's governing council for 2 states. And if I don't meet people where they are, it's almost like in a relationship, you'll get stonewalling. And I've learned from relationship coaches that I look at my wife when we talk and I make sure she's paying attention. Well, if we come with the attitude of confrontation or we're smarter, we know more than you do, that won't really serve anybody. So I do think that approach is how I approach my YouTube channel and other places where I speak. And I think that if we do that, there's no need to even mention the American Diabetes Association. I mean, we just need to put out great information and then people will find us. And we all have platforms where we can continue to share it. And we also have colleagues, just like this, the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. We're going to ask them to continue to mention it and direct people to us. And I think we'll do better that way.
I love that. And we have Dr. Westman with us now. Doc, come on and introduce yourself. And I think
sorry for
there he
being.
is. There he is.
I'm Dr. Eric Westman. I'm at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. Been here since 1990, but started studying low-carb diets around the year 2000 and have continued to use them successfully in a university-based, insurance-based medical practice. So I've been teaching people how to do that, and reversing diabetes to me is the main message that needs to get out there. And it's a buzzword to manage diabetes. In fact, someone recently talked about this new diabetes center at the University of Kentucky where I trained, and I could just go to the website and it was manage your diabetes. It was like, okay, they don't know about reversing diabetes. Even today, this morning, so I'm in the clinic, 4 days a week. The first patient I saw is on a insulin pump for type 2 diabetes. Unbelievable. So a Duke study to try, use an insulin pump. So fortunately, the person knew if she was going to lose weight, prepped her and said, you might be able to get off the pump. So I stopped that immediately because her blood glucoses were almost normal already. So I'm really excited to be part of this group and want to. I wondered if my connection to the Obesity Medicine Association, I'm past president of that group, would be helpful or not. And then the bariatric physician group, they were the first ones really to talk about diabetes reversal going back to the 1980s. Now, whether we want their money or their interest of either of these groups, I know Tony just talked about SMHP, which I'm the board as well. I'm happy to try to contact the leaders there or get awareness or money, or I don't know. I'm sure they'll probably say, it'd be great if you are a vendor and pay for a spot in our vendor area. You know, that's usually the first thing they say. But
Sure.
so I'm kind of disillusioned with the medical treatment. I was at a Chicago meeting, the Illinois obesity program there, and a young doctor came up to me and said, I use what you say all the time. And one thing that resonated is that, and what he says, he practices the best internal medicine of his life using food. You know, so a lot of times I throw out all these things, see what sticks on the wall, and that was one thing that he just came right back, and he brought my book to this medical meeting and had me sign it there. And you know, of course, I gave a talk in front of Bob Kushner, who is the world's medication expert for obesity. And I have to say, he really doesn't know anything about food. So we have to understand that the medical world is medication based, and so don't necessarily put them down, or you know, you have to just understand they're largely ignorant. And now for the first time, I think Bob Kushner knows about the work I've done, because we were in the same room and he didn't fall asleep. And so, you know, and it's hard to know if people really look at other people's work anymore. But anyway, what a great group. Thank you for your interest and commitment too. All of you, I know some of you, not all of you, but it's great to be a part.
Beautiful. Now, let me tell you this, Dr. Westman, we had previously, before you joined, discussed making all the board meetings, a recording of all the board meetings open to the public and published on the website. Do you have any objection to that?
No, no objection.
Okay, so now I think that's got all of our MDs and PhDs. Let's say hi to Michelle Hearn. Michelle, give us a little intro.
Yeah, I'm Michelle. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian since 2009. Was a traditionally trained dietitian, you know, kind of had my own health crisis. And when I worked in the clinic, I just, you know, like many of us, we just didn't see people really get better. If anything, I saw people get progressively worse. And I mean, and as recently as when I started in 2009, many physicians and dietitians believe that type 2 diabetes was a progressive disease. It was not something that got better. I mean, it was something you might be able to kind of slow the progression, but eventually you were going to, I mean, we would prep our patients like, hey, pretty soon you need to prepare for amputations. You're probably going to have heart issues. And so just like Dr. Westman, when you were speaking, Dr. Westman, it made me think, dietitians, so many dietitians, we just don't know. You know, they genuinely believe that the food that our type 2 diabetic patients need to have are these healthy whole grains consistently throughout the day. So as opposed, like Dr. Mariella was saying, like as opposed to being like, you guys are stupid, what's your problem? We really need to come with this kind of like, I believe, compassion. Like, hey, let us help you. Let us teach you why fat is good, why it's not going to cause heart disease, why carbohydrate restriction does not cause eating disorders. There's so many myths out there. So, you know, that's kind of my hope and my goal and my advocacy, you know, working with, you know, all of us here. But yeah, I'm super excited. But yeah,
Love it.
I'm a dietitian and I'm a crazy running human. I do long races.
Thank you very much. Now, Temple Stewart has just joined us. Jump on, Temple, and introduce yourself quickly.
Hey everyone, sorry I'm late. I was on kid duty this morning. So I'm a dietitian as well. I work in private practice. I have my own like telemedicine thing from social media. I've been a dietitian for 6 years. I worked first in clinical hospital setting. So I was there for about 3 or 4 years, and then I branched off to do my own thing. So yeah, it's a short story.
Thank you, Shannon.
Yes, I've been a dietitian. I was probably the oldest one on here, for 18 years, and I came from the clinical world. I did most of my time in dialysis and nephrology, which is, you know, terrible. And again, not one time did anyone ever mention carbs are, you know, not the best choice. Even I did 4 years in organ transplant at Piedmont Hospital in Atlanta. transplanting NAFLD and kidney, and never, ever, ever one time, I mean, we're tube feeding these people seed oils and fructose and oil. It's just insanity. And, I knew it wasn't right. I knew that I was helping people exist, but never heal. And so I did a small stint in pharmaceutical sales, which, I did it to pay the bills, but it was a phosphate binder. Okay. It was not something terrible, but that's how I justified it, and continued to, crawl out of my hole of, okay, instead of just absorbing this as a sponge, it's time to talk about it. And now I teach people through TikTok, believe it or not, social media. I've worked with Dr. Ben, part of Insulin IQ, and now I quit my job to do this full time and tell the world that you do not have to be chronically ill. So.
Love that. Thank you very much. Now, is it Shana or Shauna? I'm terrible with this name pronunciation.
It's Shanna.
Shanna.
And
Okay.
we have Shanna and Shannon. And Shannon, I've been in the space for 25 years, so I'm probably the the oldest dietitian here. But I've been collaborating with Michelle and Temple for quite some time. So some fellow low carb dietitians, but it took me about 15 years in this space to realize, wow, nobody's getting better than I'm teaching. And that bothered me a whole lot. And just some family chronic illnesses happened, and I was kind of catapulted into the conventional space and saw a lot that was going on there, and blinders came off. And I have my own personal story. I had insulin resistance that I didn't know about because I didn't know about the testing. I didn't know, like we were carb dosing for medications and all the nonsense that we're all well aware of. But I now have a podcast and I teach courses, and I've had an online business for about 5 years and seen hundreds, thousands of students turn their metabolic health around, and I did myself. So yeah, I'm just a testament. I'm very grateful to be part of this group, and can't wait to learn more and teach the things that we're all collaborating about.
Beautiful. Thank you. And then Jack, jump back on and introduce yourself for people who join late. This is our current attorney, secretary, and treasurer of the 501c3. He may be with the client. Oh, here he is.
Thank you, Dr. Berry. My name is Jack Nichols. I am a lawyer. I specialize in business law, and I have a lot of experience in the nonprofit space, everything from advocacy groups to sports leagues. But I really do consider myself a generalist, almost a family doctor, if you will. I've done everything from DUIs to adoptions to litigation, but really my core focus throughout my career has been advising businesses, and I serve as general counsel for about 10 to 12 businesses. From South Dakota originally, got my JD and MBA from Creighton, and currently in Houston, Texas, and my family lives in Maryland.
Beautiful. Thank
I'm
you.
excited to be part of this project too.
Oh, yeah, we're glad to have you. And Jack did the initial 501c3 and is currently helping us move forward. And then Daniel is our web designer. He did the web page. Come say hi, Daniel, and then we'll talk about more stuff.
Hey, everybody. My name is Daniel. I am in charge of the website, the marketing, the messaging. So basically, it's my job to get your ideas and get them out to everybody in a branded and consistent manner. So I'm looking forward to working with you guys over the next months, years to get this out.
Beautiful. Thank you, Daniel. So I would ask and encourage everybody to include the being on the board of the ADS in your links and bios, and a link to the ADS to help raise awareness and to help let people know there is such a thing that can help them with their metabolic disease. Now, somebody said the phrase seed oils. And so I think we're all in complete agreement that we need to be talking about a low carbohydrate diet. But for many, many voices out there, avoiding seed oils is also part of their message. How much should that be a part of the ADS message? should it be part at all? Should we just not speak about that? I know Dr. Westman definitely has a very well thought out position on this. If you want to start, Dr. Westman, and then we'll go around with the MDs and PhDs.
Well, so when you teach a low carb diet with real foods, you're basically eliminating seed oils anyway.
Right.
So the traditional teaching that I studied and published was Dr. Atkins, Dr. Eads. It predated the whole seed oil controversy or awareness. And just in my practice, I've never mentioned that you have to reduce seed oils, and it works great. And I think it's because you're just, if it is a player, if it's an actor, you're not going to get much if you follow a super low carb diet. Physiologically, oil doesn't raise your blood sugar. So from a diabetes standpoint, it's going to be, to me, in my patients, I don't know what you'll all think, but in my patients, it's confusing. It's too much of a dilution of the message that it's carbs that raise the blood glucose. So, and I'm still waiting for a study that just changed seed oils and allowed people to have carbs, willy-nilly, to say that reversed diabetes. I don't think it's possible. So, and then you get people writing books that all you have, and podcasts and YouTube videos, all you have to do is avoid seed oils and the life is great. No, it's not that important. So now, whether that's just my perspective.
No, thank you for that. Dr. Glant, do you have an opinion?
I'm a little bit more, let's say, I don't know. My experience is that if you just focus on the sugar, you're going to get to some really great place. But I find that to really, when I'm stuck and you take away all the processed food, to me, it's more about the processed food. So, it's the artificial sweeteners and the seed oils. So I totally get it. Like you're saying, like if you just eat real food and you're low carb, you're going to get the result. And that's the same thing, right? But because there's so many products out there that are keto friendly, but still are full of sugar that keeps us, artificial sweeteners as well as seed oils. I think we do have to have a real food message. Maybe that's where it's at. But I think I understand your point about, about the randomized control trial. But if we wait for that randomized control trial, well, I think that there are two things here. One is the fact that the damage is probably being caused. There's enough data on the preclinical level, I think, to really understand that this is probably not good for us. And secondly, the question is, and I personally don't eat seed oils. I don't want to wait till that data, just like I wouldn't want to wait till we have the cardiovascular data on keto, right? Because we know that the chances that it decreases cardiovascular disease are enormous, even though we don't have that data, right? So I'm trying to say here that we have to pick our battles. So we don't want to dilute the message. And I get that. I think, but I don't think we should ignore it. Okay. So I think it should be like second order of magnitude. First, let's focus on the sugar. But I think that this is also important, and it just makes it more complicated. But I, just because it's complicated doesn't mean that it's not important. I think just because we don't have the trials, I feel like it's still an issue. So I'm sorry that I'm being long-winded about this. I think it should be mentioned. But we should prioritize the sugar and carbs, which are already a very, very big message to get out. So, but I do think that the focus on the real food might be what brings it all together.
Yeah,
I love that.
Can I just share a quick
let me add
thought?
this, Dr. Professor Bigman. Let me add this. What if we had our dietitians as they create the recipes for the website and also to be shared on social media? What if the recipes just called for butter or lard or beef tallow, and we didn't make that a bullet point, just an obvious bullet point, but that's just what the recipes call for. That's just my thought. Go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Right. So I do think I like this idea of us having a very consistent, clean message. Very, very briefly, if we, I look with some curiosity when I see people making these ardent claims that seed oils are the cause of insulin resistance. That is not clear in the research. That when you treat, I can go to my lab right now. I've done these experiments. I've published a paper, my highest cited paper ever in the Journal of Clinical Investigation. If you treat cells with saturated fat, I've talked about this and the conflict of taking it too far, but I'm going to use it anyway. If you treat a cell with saturated fat, it will become insulin resistant within about 15 minutes. If you co-incubate those same cells with saturated fat and linoleic acid, they're insulin sensitive. And moreover, then if you feed a human a high linoleic acid diet, I've not seen evidence to show that that causes insulin resistance. Now, I am not saying seed oils are benign. I'm not saying that. I believe they can disrupt mitochondrial function. An interesting paper was published recently. They can disrupt membranes, and in the course of that may disrupt other signaling. But they likely contribute to fatty liver disease. They likely contribute to cancer. But if we're just trying to stay in our lane, which I always try to do, and in this case, type diabetes, either any type of the myriad types, but insulin resistance most especially, I try to talk about that very carefully because the evidence is not that convincing. There is good evidence to show that you have humans overeat carbs for just 6 days, their fasted insulin has gone up 3 times while their glucose levels are still normal. All the reason to look at the marker that matters most in that situation. But when it comes to seed oils, as pathogenic as they are, and I absolutely believe they are, the claims that they are the cause of insulin resistance, I am not I don't make that claim. Not that it's wrong, but I am not convinced by the evidence. And I talk about it as an indirect influence because a seed oil peroxide for HNE will influence fat cell growth, promoting greater hypertrophy. And as everyone here has probably heard me go on before, it's the hypertrophic fat cell that will contribute to systemic insulin resistance. So there could be that effect. But it is more indirect. So I think it is worth us acknowledging, yes, seed oils are definitely a health problem, but the evidence that they are a direct contributor, and we can leave this part unsaid, the evidence that they are a direct contributor to insulin resistance is not clear. And
right, but what about, can I ask you what your thoughts are about the randomized control trials that actually increase mortality?
Yeah. Oh, no, for sure. Yeah. So you can take like the studies, the multiple studies that have been done in past decades show that the group that was eating the higher polyunsaturated fat diet died more, all while their cholesterol was getting better. That is absolutely relevant and truly why I think it's so important for us to acknowledge that seed oils are a problem. But we just need to remember what our purpose is. I think my interest in the ADS is because I'm interested in diabetes. And I think we need to just remember, I would say we have to just focus on one thing, which is we're not trying to cure every disease. We're trying to address diabetes. And so that's what I'm talking about. So Mariella, absolutely. If I haven't made it clear, let me make it clear one more time. I firmly believe seed oils are pathogenic and contribute to chronic disease. The degree to which they directly contribute to insulin resistance, there is very good evidence on both sides of that, including evidence I've generated with my own hands. It's just not clear. I still believe they're problematic, but with insulin resistance, it's not so clear.
Excellent.
Right.
Okay, thank you, doctors. And now, Dr. Cavan, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. I would concur with that, and I would, when Eric spoke first, I thought, well, that's exactly my view. I think we need to make sure that the messaging is as clear as possible. And, maybe because I have a male brain, maybe because I'm getting on in years, I like really simple messages, and I like to convey simple messages. And absolutely, first and foremost, the message, if we're talking about diabetes, is you need to reduce sugars and starches, to follow a low carb diet. And then very closely alongside that is you need to eat real foods. You need to ditch the junk foods, ditch the ultra processed foods, and focus on eating real foods. And to my mind, that's actually enough. That's enough to really get people going and get people getting metabolically more healthy. Because, as has already been said, in doing that, you're going to reduce the seed oils quite significantly anyway. But my anxiety is if we're being absolutist and say, right, you got to cut the carbs, or you got to go on a ketogenic diet, and you've got to make sure you exclude all seed oils. We're then having people looking at absolutely everything that they might be eating, or going to a restaurant, or the salad dressing that they're using. And, if they're occasionally putting a seed oil on, a product that's got a seed oil in it, then if on the whole they're actually doing really well and losing weight, and their metabolic markers are improving, and they're reversing their diabetes, I'd much rather they stick to what is working and be not confused than there be some confusion as to, well, is it the seed oil or is it the carbs? So yes, and of course they're not ideal, and there are health problems associated with them. But there is also with alcohol. And are we going to take a position on alcohol and say everyone has to abstain from alcohol forever? Because again, that's not going to work for a lot of people. So choose, as always, I think choose the battles, and the battle is against carbohydrates, it's against ultra processed foods. And yes, we can include discussion about the health benefits of avoiding seed oils, of avoiding alcohol, of all sorts of other things. But I would very much want that to be lower down the ranking, and not in the top line messaging.
Thank you, Doctor. Excellent points. And then Dr. Hampton, your thoughts on this?
Well, where I sit on the south side of Chicago, most of my patients don't know what a carb is, right? So, and I give them a handout that will explain this stuff. But when I talk to them in this clinic, and I'll be doing that in the next 10 minutes or so, I talk about carbs. That's it. And if they want to have an artificial sweetener or a seed oil as we start our journey, who cares? All I care about is what's spiking their sugar and what's not. And I could literally not tell them anything, but do what the glucose meter tells you to do. So stop eating the stuff that's spiking you. And then, so there's levels to this. So that's step one, is to make sure they understand the basics. But my handout also, I just released a video today that talked about the 6 animal fats that are good for you. And it also stated in that video that seed oils are not necessarily good for you. But the emphasis in my handout and even in that video is, listen, eat real food, stop eating processed food. And the real food is the animal fats, not the seed oils that took like 90 steps to process it. So I think if we have a step one where we focus on what matters for people who are in 5th grade, and then step 2, we still have information that's available to people. So, what's the big picture? Well, stop eating all these carbs. And then number 2, there are some other things you need to think about. We don't overemphasize that, but we may make that available so they'll know what causes inflammation. And we know that's processed food. And in this case, maybe it's seed oil. So that's kind of how I would approach it, because I think that if we get too nuanced, and we don't have if we don't see in this setting, guys, as I think about our endocrinologist, right? My endocrinologist, if it's not data driven, they don't want to hear it. And so we don't want them to give them tools to argue against what we're sharing, particularly for our specialists who will only listen to data.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Now I'm gonna, Daniel, come back up. Daniel texted me. He's got some kind of core questions that we all need to be thinking about. Also in the near future, we need to come up with a set of bylaws, which Jack will help with. But Daniel, come up and discuss the things that you just texted me.
Yeah. So as part of the marketing and as part of a new organization, I think it's very important to just kind of like lay the groundwork of what we're trying to do. So I have a couple questions for everybody on this call. Hopefully we can come to a consensus of what the answers are. But the very first question is, what is the core mission of the ADS?
Gotcha. And these questions can be rhetorical just in the interest of time, because we're definitely going to have a second meeting. So go through let's keep these questions rhetorical right now for thought, rumination, and then we'll come together again maybe next week or some, and then we'll put this stuff in stone.
Okay, so yeah, so the big three that I have right now is just what's the core mission of the ADS? What is our vision statement? Where do we see the organization in about 5 to 10 years? And then what are our key messaging points? What are the messaging points that's going to resonate with our audience, our stakeholders in the community? And these key points also should align with our mission and our statement.
Perfect. So you guys be thinking about that mission statement and what's our vision for the next 5 to 10 years. What is our vision statement? I'm assuming that's different from a core mission. And then key messaging points. And that's what I was getting at with the seed oils and the other questions. The next question that I have on my list is, I think we all agree that you can drastically improve or reverse type 2 diabetes with a low carb diet or a ketogenic diet or a ketovore diet or a carnivore diet. Should there be a vegan option for the ADS? Should we have an opinion about that? Should we leave that alone? And that's the question. So whoever jump in.
I'll start. And having just spent time in San Diego with Dr. Rashani Sanghani, who's doing great work in India, it's hard for me to imagine that we don't touch on that, because in her world, where you have people with the Hindu religion, most of her patients are plant-based. So, but she's managed to come up with a program that has helped them to thrive. And again, this goes back to meeting people where they are. And this may not be our preferred dietary plan, but even a diet doctor has an approach. So I do think that if we don't do that, we may, again, alienate some folk who have, for very good reasons, have adopted a plant-based diet. And I would prefer we have an approach where we meet people who struggle with that in a way that allows them to also have the same success with the low-carb folk.
And so anybody else feel free to jump in. What about, so the way I understand this, vegan would be exclusively plants, and then vegetarian would include dairy, maybe seafood, and maybe arthropoda, and maybe seafood. And then plant-based, I think it feels nebulous to me. Does that mean plants only, or is that including other things, but predominantly plants? Yeah. Anybody else's thoughts on vegan? And when I say vegan, I mean exclusively plant-based. Any thoughts?
Guys,
So
I think,
sorry.
Dave, I'll be very, very brief. I think that we ought to consider how we can message this in a way that creates a common theme. Please pardon what sounds like a shameless plug. When I was writing my follow-up book, The How Not to Get Sick, I wanted to make sure, just as Tony mentioned, that this was not exclusive. I don't think we want this to be exclusive and polarizing. So I basically presented the paradigm that you can resolve insulin resistance by two strategies: lowering insulin or lowering energy. Both will improve insulin sensitivity. It's just which one is going to get you further down the path. If you start with, I'm just cutting energy back without addressing the hyperinsulinemia, you're going to become very hungry very quickly. And before you know it, you're right back where you started. And so my advice is let's create a discussion, a strategy that says, look, whatever you eat, you want to just basically say, how much is this going to spike my insulin? Which, to say that another way, is how much is this going to spike my glucose? You know, if someone's eating whole fruits and vegetables, while they certainly would be becoming nutrient deficient, so they need to be mindful of that, if it's whole fruits and vegetables, their glucose is going to be all right, probably for the most part, and thus their insulin will be fine, and thus they will be improving their insulin sensitivity. They'll likely be energy deficient somewhat as well, lower calorie, which I'm not necessarily an advocate of, but it will improve insulin sensitivity. So maybe we just focus on trying to create some core themes which can then be applied to myriad diets.
Love it. Dr. Kevin?
Yeah, I think again we need to be as inclusive as possible and mindful that a lot of people for various reasons do follow a largely plant-based diet. And I don't think we need to get too stuck into, you know, whether that includes fish or whether that includes dairy or whatever, because there are probably as many different interpretations of that as there are populations around the world. You know, Diet Doctor has already been mentioned, and they, in the past, I've not looked recently, but they've had really good articles and guidance for people who are vegetarian or vegan. And you know, I think that in my practice, when I talk to patients, you know, one of my early questions is, do you eat meat? And they're expecting me to say, oh, no, I'm really good. I don't eat red meat. And when they say, yes, I eat meat, I say, oh, that's really good. That's going to make it easier then for us. Because it does make it more difficult if you don't eat meat. But I think we need to, and I guess I'm probably just echoing what's been said. We need to be as inclusive as possible. We need also to be honest and say that the chances of full remission of type 2 diabetes may be more difficult in, you know, with some diets rather than others. But we, you know, I think what I really didn't want to see was that, you know, this became a carnivore organization, or this became, you know, a particular strand, because the comment, and I've heard people who, you know, doctors who advocate a plant-based diet talk about how they've helped people reverse their diabetes, and they've almost certainly done it by excluding the high ultra-processed foods and the sugars. So there needs to be room for everyone. And I don't think we need to get too bogged down in defining all the different types of diets, but, you know, just point people to sources of good quality information.
Excellent. Dr. Westman, any thoughts on that?
No, I agree 100%. In fact, I was going to step back even. Do we want to include the drug and the surgical methods that reverse type 2 diabetes? Or do we largely, or just, I can see a lot of RDs, just say we're really just talking about how to do it with food?
That's an excellent question. Everybody be thinking about that question for the next meeting. Should we talk about surgical and pharmaceutical interventions that absolutely can improve type 2 diabetes and in many cases reverse it? That's an excellent question for future discussion.
I mean, my preference is food only, but that's
my preference also, but I think that's if we're going to be a kind of a whole circumspect a society, I think probably we need to have a position on that. So everybody be thinking about that, and dietitians don't.
Can I just come in on that very quickly?
Oh, yes, sir, doctor.
And that is that you know, in the real world, we use medications in type 2 diabetes, and I think we should be acknowledging that. And I have a slide that I use when I'm teaching medical students, and it's actually, well, which of the medications that we can use that are going to help people reverse their type 2 diabetes, because some are potentially going to help, and you maybe have it as a tool. And especially when you're deprescribing, people need to know, well, which are the ones to stay on and which are the ones to try and stop sooner rather than later. So I think we can and should include information about that, because if you want to, and I know this is not going to be, if you want to be a resource for people with diabetes, we need to be able to address the people who are on medications and give them hope as well, and not feel that they're not going to be able to achieve remission or partial remission because they're on medications, but we can help them on a route towards that.
Love it. Okay, so lots of food for thought in the future about those kind of what I think are key issues. Next, let's talk about fundraising. This is very much a grassroots movement and organization. And as you saw, we have $116,000 in the bank. In order to make any meaningful impact, that number, we're going to have to add a zero to that. And so I would encourage any of you guys, we have a few angel investors who are waiting in the wings when we do have enough of a presence on social media and in the academic community, they will step forward and write a check. But those type people want to know that we're serious, that we're not going away. We're going to be very active and busy. And so I would encourage all you guys, if you know of any quote unquote angel investors who could write a meaningful check, please, that's part of this advocacy. Please reach out to them and say, hey, we're doing great work here. We're going to change the entire architecture of type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, all diabetes treatment. Please help us move this mission forward. Any thoughts from anybody about the fundraising, which is about to kick off? Because, you can't tell people we're a big deal if we've got 13 followers on TikTok. And I know some of you guys may not be on TikTok, but that's a real thing. And that people look at that, and that is a measurement of success and credibility in today's modern world. Any thoughts on fundraising in general or specifically?
Hey, Dr. Berry, I know some people have had a lot of success, especially when they're like starting or they're new, doing almost like either a 24-hour or 12-hour, just kind of a talk, right? Where you have different people come on every hour talking about topics, and people, donate money, as things come up. So maybe, planning, and I don't know if it'd have to be 24 hours. I wouldn't be super excited about being on at like 3 in the morning. But you know what I'm saying? Like getting different people and, asking, and you can reach out to, we could reach out to big people in the community. But that's in my experience, that's people been able to raise, thousands of dollars doing that.
Excellent. Any other thoughts?
I think leveraging the audiences of those here on this board who have larger audiences will be very crucial for us. I was just looking at the subscription numbers right now. We have 1,353 subscribers in our email list. Of that, 95 have donated to Zephy. And that doesn't include the, I believe, several hundred who have donated on GoFundMe, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I think if we're able to leverage everybody's audiences, we can definitely move the needle on that.
Excellent. Now, let me tell you, I just thought of this, but it's right in the fundraising. Dexcom, they have the new lingo, right? And they actually sent me an email and said that they were interested in, I'm not sure what they're interested in, but I'm interested in them writing us a check, because I'm sure Dexcom has a good checking account. And so that they're not big food, they're not big pharma. Now Dexcom has, fingers in other pies, but if we would, is everybody okay? Well, let me put it this way. Does anybody have an objection from accepting money from Dexcom lingo in that their CGM business? Any objection to that?
No, not at all. I think I shouldn't say not at all. I think that we have to be a little nimble because it's almost like politics. If you're going to compete with big pharma and all the lobbyists who bought the suites for the Democratic convention, right? How are you going to compete with that if you don't allow organizations that align with our vision to support this mission? So I do think that there's a need to have the resources so that we can get this message out. So we have to be very thoughtful. We should always bring it to the board. But as long as there's not a big conflict, we have to be nimble, I think, in order to at least get our message out. It's just the reality of resources.
Love it. Any objections to that sort of donation? Anybody else? Okay.
No,
Go ahead, Doctor. Did you have something?
I was just saying no objection.
Okay, beautiful. Now, another idea I had about increasing awareness is releasing press releases, kind of the old-fashioned thing, but obviously it'd be on social media and online. When the AHA, the ADA, the AMA, when they make a statement, not to be confrontational or inflammatory, but to just issue a press release responding to that in an adult, evidence-based manner. This is something I thought about in the future. Any objections or thoughts on that?
No, but Ken, how do we feel about releasing like a first press release to introduce the ADS and also its board members, like the coming weeks?
Yep. That probably should be the first press release. That's a great point. Any other thoughts on that, guys?
Well, I think also going back to the early part of our discussion, even if you're not wanting to be confrontational, if each time another organization issues a press release, we issue one addressing that press release, it could be seen as confrontational. I'd much rather you be proactive and issuing the press releases. Why do you need to be reactive to what anyone else is doing would be my first thought on that. Now, if there was something really outrageous that we felt needed to be challenged, then on an individual basis, then wherever it came from, then yes, it would be absolutely valid that we do that, but not as a routine. I wouldn't have thought.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on that, and then we'll start to wrap up.
Dr. Berry, just before I forget about it, I did have a conversation with Dr. Palmer over the last weekend, and something that he mentioned in, navigating a nonprofit would be to consider sustainability and to have a sustainability plan in place of what it looks like to continue this 3 years and 5 years out, especially if you're going to bigger companies and bigger investors. Because while I think having a stream of income grassroots is really important, especially for this group, if we're going to also be looking at higher bigger benefactors and bigger investors, what they're going to want to see is how are we going to sustain this long term so that their investment is worth their time and their money.
Yep, excellent point. And that brings me to one final thing I wanted to ask everybody. We currently have intentions to hire, so spending money, the first spend I think should be a social media manager, so that we have somebody full-time who is they're taking clips, they're taking all the information and putting it on all the social media, putting the information out for people so that they can learn from that. And then the second possible hire would be somebody who they're actually advisors who can take a young nonprofit like the ADS and help it reach out to investors and the people with bigger pocketbooks who are happy to help something like that grow. And Chris Palmer, Dr. Chris Palmer, we had this conversation over the weekend, and he gave us great information. Like people who are going to write $100,000 check or a $500,000 check, they want to know what you're going to do with that money, what's your long-term vision. And a nonprofit growth manager would be somebody who's helped other nonprofits grow quickly in the beginning and also not become defunct or bankrupt and just disappear. Does anybody have any thoughts or objections to that being the first two positions that we look at actually spending money on?
I think that's smart. I think that's absolutely what you should do, because I think you'll die. Like you have to have social media. That's the only way to reach people. And I also think having a specialist that, like, this is what I do. I take, $100,000 and turned it into $1 million with a long-term vision. Like,
Right.
I think that's a great idea.
Anybody else?
It seems a good idea. I can't comment from any personal knowledge, but
Yeah, I'm like you, Dr. Kevin. I have no knowledge of how a nonprofit runs. And so that's why I thought it might be good to have somebody like that, that's their professional expertise. Any other thoughts on that?
I would just say ditto. I worked with a therapist, physical therapist, or trainer this morning, and I thought I knew the human body until I started working with a trainer. I think we always have to have experts who can walk with us so we won't fall in these rabbit holes that are not serving us. So I think this is just a logical thing we need to do. It's worth the investment.
I love it. Okay, guys, let's wrap up. Any final thoughts that you think that's important that we haven't covered that we need to cover in this first board meeting of the ADS?
I'm just going to chime in real quick. I'm going to be sending all the board members their own branded ADS emails. So I'm going to be collecting everybody's current personal emails and then emailing you the login information to your new branded ADS email. We can make communications to that in the future. I'll send you the login information as well as your account information, and then also just some notes to think about from this meeting, so that by the time we meet next time, you will have we can hopefully move forward on some of these talking points and things that we need to get the brand messaging solidified. And yeah, that should get us to our next point.
Excellent. Anybody else? Any final thoughts?
just really following up on that, well, a couple of logistical things. One is you mentioned earlier our next meeting, possibly next week. I need a lot longer than that to schedule a meeting, I'm afraid. So yes. I think, if we can bear in mind that, I mean, as it happens, this slot for me works quite well most weeks, but not every week. But let's fix a meeting for maybe 3 or 4 weeks. But can we use the time in between by email to answer those questions about core mission, vision statements, and key messaging points? Because I'm really encouraged by what I've heard today. I feel I understand much more what we are trying to achieve, but I would really want to get agreement on those before going to public with the other things from a personal point of view. But I'm happy to be doing that via email if that works with others.
Excellent. Anybody
so we
else?
Can finalize it when we next meet.
Yes, perfect. Anybody else? All right, excellent. I think this has been very productive, and I think we're in the right direction. I'll be working behind the scenes. Feel free to email each other. Email me with any ideas. Daniel is the social media marketing guy, and Jack Nichols is the attorney if you have any legal questions. Did somebody have something? I don't know who that is. Okay. All right, guys, let's end it for today. Thank you so much for being part of this. Thanks for let's blow the ADS up and make it public knowledge that there is a society out there that will help you achieve a normal A1C. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.